Hello everybody, a warm welcome to all of you. This is Arvind from Shri Bagavath Mission. We are going to take up a very interesting topic for discussion. Before we get into what the topic is about, I would like to give you a small introduction or a prelude to today's topic. It so happened that when this topic came up, one of the senior members of Shri Bagavath Mission, Mr. Saravanan, expressed his happiness, that this topic has come up for discussion, and he said this is one of the most interesting and very important topic that's affecting today's younger generation, and in some ways older generations as well. So he said you have a huge task in front of you, and he expressed his confidence that I should be able to deliver a good talk on this subject. While this lays out the enormity of the task in front of me, I'm actually happy at having been given this opportunity to discuss this subject. I would actually think, that instead of me choosing the topic has chosen me. So I'm proceeding with that confidence that I will be able to help you all in solving one of the most important questions that's facing many people today. So what we are going to discuss, to put it simply, let me pose the question which will set the tone for the topic. The question is, can we get rid of bad habits? Wow. Now you understand the enormity of the topic. Beautiful. So I'm going to try to make this as free flowing as possible. I'm going to keep this as logical as possible. So people, stay with me. I'm not going to rush through this topic. I'm not going to sort of run through this topic. I'm going to walk at a very convenient pace. So I would suggest that wherever you feel the need, please pause the video, sit back, think through, try to digest and assimilate what we are discussing. And once you feel a little comfortable, then you can resume the video. I personally find that on topics such as these, this kind of an approach really helps us, because for once we are going to crack this riddle. We are going to solve this problem and be done with it, right? So before we get into this topic, how are we going to answer this? We are going to take it step by step. So at the outset, what I would request, or what I would sort of suggest is that we should not be first judgmental about this topic. I, for one, am not judgmental. I'm just trying to tackle it as a small issue that can be easily addressed, right? So with this kind of an introduction, let's get into the subject. So can we get rid of bad habits? So that begs the question, what is a bad habit? Moment we are able to sort of define what is a bad habit, half the task is done. So bad habit, the word itself sort of bothers us when we say it, right? So what is a bad habit? It is essentially a habit that sort of binds us, or in simpler terms, that sort of controls us. So as long as it's a habit which is once in a while, or it is just a passing thing, we really don't call it a bad habit, do we? So only when it acquires the nature of a control over us, that's when it starts bothering us. that's when we feel we need to do something about it, right? So in one sentence, if you ask me, it is a habit that controls us. um, is that all? What if a habit controls me? What is the issue with that? The problem is, it's not just about the control. What happens because of the control? Um, if that habit, or that controlling habit, if you will please, if that habit disturbs my peace of mind, that's where the problem is. As long as I'm happy doing it, fine, whatever it is. Let the second person or the third person think whatever they want to think. As long as it doesn't bother me and I'm happy doing it, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a bad habit. I know I'm making a sort of a controversial statement here. I'm aware of it. I will just put out one small disclaimer. While making this statement, I would suggest that we can feel happy about a habit, but if our indulging in that habit is going to cause harm or damage or trouble to the society at large or to people around us, then we may have to probably classify this as a bad habit and take adequate precaution, right? So with this kind of a background, if you look at any habit that disturbs our peace of mind, then that's a bad habit. So now we have sort of described or defined what is a bad habit. So why are they formed? Why does a bad habit form at all? you know just like any other habit, uh, it doesn't ask for our permission to form, right? No, it doesn't come and say, hey, look, Arvind, I want to manifest, I want to sort of come and live with you, so is it okay with you? No. If you were to ask me, I'm obviously going to say no, but that's how it works, right? So typically, how does it form? If you look at your own life, two things that can sort of uh, come up as common answers. One, it would have initially started as a form of relaxation. You know, I can give you a list of such habits. Smoking, drinking, so on and so forth. Uh, this is one reason. What is the other reason? The other reason can be peer pressure. Our friends are doing it, our relatives are doing it. So there is some pressure on us to also sort of imbibe that habit. You come across a friend who says, hey dude, why don't you just give it a shot? I mean, I'm doing it, man. What is the big deal? I think you should try. So just because you want to sound cool, just because you want to conform to the friends group, you initially think that you will just give it a small try, but without you realizing, it slowly becomes a habit, and it slowly becomes a controlling factor, and slowly it starts destroying your or disturbing your peace. So this is how it forms, right? And when do they form? There is no particular rule about it, or there is no particular way that you can describe this. But generally, if you go to notice, most of these habits form in our teens, in our early teens, or maybe at least your mid teens. Let me just step back at this point and give you a practical example. It's a very interesting thing, that I remember from my memory. I didn't realize it at that point of time when I first heard it, but having understood how the mind works, and having heard and trained with the enlightened master Shri Bagavath, now I'm able to join the dots. Okay, so the example that I'm going to give you is of my own father. My father had been a smoker. He's quit now. So he was smoking for the better part of something like, say, 55-60 years. So when I first sort of had this discussion with my dad, so I asked him, when did you ever start smoking first? And his answer zapped me, because I never really thought such a thing could be possible in that generation, my dad's generation. But His answer was, very nonchalant and point blank. He said, I started smoking when I was in school. I said, what? School? Are you serious? He said, yeah. So I let it go at that point, but later on, when I started learning about mind, the way it works, etc., then I realized, how early a particular habit can actually form, right? So this is just to give you a background as to how or when uh, a habit like this can form, right? So typically it starts in your mid-teens or your late teens, 15, 16, 17, that way. Um, it's not necessary that it has to happen only in your teens. It can happen even after you get a little older, when you start working. The life situation could have prompted you to take up an indulgence, or if I can put it that way, or a habit. So while the common thing is the teens, it can actually happen at any point of time in life. So we have sort of laid the foundation for the topic, up to now. um, I would suggest that you can maybe take a pause, uh, sit back and think what all has happened, in your own case. When you think of the word or the phrase bad habit, uh, think through your own life. Try to define it for yourself. See if that definition agrees with what we have discussed now. Try to find out why it has formed. Try to find out when it formed for you. So once you start relating this subject with your own life, then it's easy to understand the subject and easy to come up with a solution, right? So um, are we clear about this up to now? Right. So now that we have laid the foundation, let's try to answer the question. Uh, just to remind us all, the question that we asked ourselves: can we get rid of bad habits? Instead of directly answering it with an yes or no, I would like to take the next logical step and try to answer it by giving you a brief background about the existing work that has happened on the subject, and what is it that we in Sri Bagavath Mission are proposing, or more particularly, what is it that the living enlightened master Sri Bagavath has put out, right? So, moment you say bad habits, moment you try to sort of search on the internet, or a lot of self-help books are available. So if you try to get hold of a book, lot of techniques and methods have been put out, right? Probably you would have tried out a few of them yourself. In my opinion, most of these things are either difficult to sustain because it requires you to keep practicing it over a lifetime, or it sounds in most cases very theoretical. So when you try to apply it in your life, it just doesn't gel at all, right? So in one sentence, if you ask me, most of these topics are ineffective. uh, Sorry for using a very strong word, but I suppose that's the truth, right? So we have all faced it at some point of the time or other. So given this background, um, so what are we proposing? So Master Sri Bhagavat has put out a very radical approach, something that in my case I have not come across. Uh, a method which addresses this subject from a totally fresh and different angle. He approaches this in a very logical fashion, which is what actually interested me, about the technique that he is talking about. I'm one who's so fond of logic, and I'm anything that appeals to logic is something that really clicks for me, right? So, uh, so he approaches this from the point of understanding mind. So when you understand mind, when you understand how mind works, when you understand how mind forms a habit, I'm consciously repeating the word mind again and again. Why? Because ultimately that's the bedrock, that's the soil, that's the foundation on which this whole habit thing springs up, grows, germinates, right? So once you understand that basic stuff, then it's, believe me, it's a cakewalk, right? You can really ace it, right? Um, so within this concept of understanding mind and trying to apply this, to tackle the subject, um, I can present it in with the help of two different approaches, right? Um, the first approach is what I would like to call pursuit of pleasure approach. It's similar to a recent Hollywood movie, starring Will Smith, Pursuit of Happiness. A very, very beautiful movie, moving movie actually. So something similar, pursuit of pleasure approach. So uh, in this approach, we are trying to find out uh, what makes the bad habit click. Why does it stay? Why does it trouble us? Why aren't we able to get rid of it? So, uh, typically, a habit is formed because we derive some pleasure out of it. If we were not deriving any pleasure out of it, it will not be a repetitive habit, right? It will not assume a level of control over us. It will not disturb our peace, right? So it's clear that there is some pleasure that we're deriving out of it, and because we are pursuing that pleasure, we are indulging in it more and more. um, so once we realize that this habit has taken control, it is disturbing our peace, then what do? We try to do the exact opposite of it, which is try to avoid that habit. Now, why are we trying to avoid the habit? Because at some point this habit has uh, stopped giving us pleasure, and it has started giving us more trouble, or the incremental pleasure that we are getting out of that habit is reducing. So then we realize that I know I should do something about it. No, it's enough. It's about time, right? So once we come to that, then we try to do the opposite of it, which is try to remove it. So indirectly, without our realizing, what are we doing? We are actually trying to derive pleasure by removing this habit. So either which ways, it's a pursuit of pleasure, right? Which is why I'm calling this approach as pursuit of pleasure approach. So by trying to indulge in the habit, we are pursuing pleasure. By trying to avoid the habit at some point of time, or at a later point of time, we are again trying to pursue pleasure. So have we been successful in this? For most of us, that's not the case, right? We have tried our level best, and even when we have tried to get rid of the habit, we have had our own share of trials. We have tried so many tricks and techniques. We have not really been successful. That's the bottom line. So the approach that Master Sri Bhagavath is putting out is, don't fight it. Uh, to hear it for the first time, it will sound very simple, and probably you might think, what? How is this going to be a solution? It zapped me the first time when I heard it. When I heard, don't fight it, don't fight it. What do you want me to do? You want me to give up? You want me to live with it for life? That these were the questions that bombarded me. But then I sat through. I heard what he was trying to tell me, right? So his thing is, moment you are trying to fight it, it's like an adversary which gains or derives its strength from you. I can give you a parallel at this juncture. Um, this is from a story, or a part of the story from an Indian epic called Ramayana, right? Um, there are two characters which are involved in that sequence. One is the hero of the epic, which is Lord Ram, and the other is the villain called Vali, right? The mythology goes that this villain has been granted a boon, where he can acquire 50% of his adversary's strength, right? So if the adversary is going to come and stand in front of him and call him for a fight, Wali has his own 100% strength and he derives an extra 50% from his adversary. So his adversary is left with 50% and Wali was left with 150% of strength. Do you think this adversary is going to win? I mean, it's a lopsided fight, right? He's just going to make a mess of it, right? So in our discussion also, this subject of bad habit is something like that villain in that story. Moment you try to fight it, it's going to take your own strength, turn it against you, and you will end up losing the fight, right? So which is the reason why we need to give up the fight. So what happens when we give up the fight? In one sentence, I would say something remarkable happens. A remarkable transformation happens within you. At this juncture, I would like you to pause. I'm leaving you with a suspense. I would like you to pause, assimilate what we have discussed till now, and then restart the video. Right. So now that we have restarted the video, before I go on and explain what it means to give up the fight, I would like to put forth a very interesting theory, and I would like to borrow the subject of economics. Now, I know most of you are astonished. Where is economics? Where is bad habits? What are you talking about economics in this subject? And the reason why I'm bringing up the subject of economics is I'm reminded of a theory that I learned while studying economics. Don't go by the jargon; it might sort of unsettle you, but just for the sake of your knowing it, I'm giving it out. That theory's name is law of diminishing marginal utility. It might sound very very enormous, it might sound out of the earth and all that, but if I were to explain that theory through an example, it's even a school going kid can easily understand, right? So the theory in essence states that anything that you do or anything that gives you pleasure, if you keep indulging in it more and more, each successive time that you undertake that activity, the pleasure that you derive from that activity is going to keep reducing, right? This is something similar to what we were discussing, right? Now you understand the connection. Now you understand why I took up this theory for discussion, right? So how do I explain this with an example? Let's say you're fond of eating chocolates. I know most of us are, isn't it? Right? So let's say you have been given an endless supply of chocolates. You have a whole box of chocolates right in front of you. So you've been told you can have as much as you want. So you take up the first bar of chocolate, you start relishing it. So you take your time, you almost do it like a meditation, right? So you are enjoying yourself. You completed the first bar. Now that you've been told that no, there is an endless supply, right enough, you want to take up the second piece of chocolate. So you're taking it up. So you are at it. So first chocolate, second chocolate, third chocolate, fourth chocolate. You will realize. I would actually suggest that you all try this out at least once. So that it's not just theory. So you can actually understand the practical side of this theory. I've tried it out, so which is why I'm confidently asking you all to try as well. So each successive chocolate that we have, the pleasure or the enjoyment that we derive from it keeps reducing, so much so that probably fifth bar of chocolate, even that itself will be a little too much. Maybe let's say you are a real sweet tooth, so at least by the 10th bar of chocolate, it might actually, from a pure enjoyment level, it might actually go to a pure revulsion level. You will actually feel revolting to have a bar of chocolate. You will say, enough, I'm done with it, no more chocolate. I don't want to have a chocolate ever in my life. This transformation actually happens. You can try it out. I'm not joking. You can actually try it out. So why did this happen? Here is where we come across this interesting thing about how our mind works. What our mind does is, the first time it derives a pleasure, the second time a marginally reduced pleasure, third time even more reduced pleasure. So the pleasure keeps reducing with each successive attempt. At some point, the mind starts feeling, that I don't really want this. I want to stop this activity. I want to stop this indulgence, right? So this is in essence is how you understand the law of diminishing marginal utility, right? Now, let's get back to our earlier discussion. Where did we leave the discussion? We left it at the juncture where we said we will have to stop fighting, right? So now, having understood this example, we'll realize that indulging in the habit is not helping us. So we come to the opposite of it, which is to get rid of the habit, right? So that is when we take up this idea of stopping the fight. So let me just remind you of the story of Wali, where he acquires the strength of the adversary also to the extent of 50%, right? So is the case with our bad habit. So when we try to fight it, it just acquires extra strength and it's something adamant that we can't get rid of. So moment we say, I'm not going to fight this anymore. If it comes, let it come. If it is going to make me do something, let me do it. So when you give up this fight, what happens is mind is sort of baffled. It's either used to enjoying, or it's either used or it is used to being rejected. No, it can't handle freedom. When you allow the mind to be free, the mind just can't handle. This is the transformation that Master Shri Bagavath explained to us. And when I first heard it, I said, what is this? This is something I've never come across. And when I started applying it in my life, I realized that this is so wonderful. I mean, why didn't anybody think of this before? If you ask us, people familiar with psychology, psychiatry, even people from that walk of life have acknowledged that this technique is very unique, and it actually gives wonderful results. We have in Bagavath Mission, we have actually had a psychiatrist who wanted to kick his own bad habit come to us, and we have helped him with these kind of techniques to quit his own bad habit. He was sitting at his clinic and sort of helping his patients get out of bad habits, while he himself was a prey to it. So it is not just my corroboration. It is not just because Master Bagavath says that it works. We have had practical feedback, from the scientific fraternity, from people who are actually practicing this for a living, right? So to get back to our discussion, so the mind, when it sort of is set free, then it realizes that there's nothing much that it needs to do. So it just goes with the flow. Our master keeps saying, go with the flow. Flow with the flow. That's the word that's the phrase he often uses. Flow with the flow. So you let the habit flow. So this is where the law of diminishing marginal utility kicks in. So moment you give freedom, then you will probably start doing that habit, and each successive time that you do the habit, the pleasure that is derived is lesser, but you will not fight and try to get rid of it. You have let the mind get free, experience freedom. So over a period, and it can happen in days, it can happen in hours. We have had examples across the range, people who have been able to quit immediately, people who have taken days or weeks, or in some extreme cases a couple of months to quit, right? Or not, I wouldn't even say the word quit, it's the habit leaves them. That's the beauty of it. The habit leaves them. It's not that you've left the habit. You one fine day you realize that habit is no longer with you. It's an unwanted guest which has left the house, without you actually pushing the guest out. That's the beauty of it. So uh, so because of this freedom, eventually the habit starts um, uh, losing its control over you. That's the way to put it, losing its control over you. And you'll realize a sense of freedom yourself, a sense of lightness. You know that you're in the right space, right? Now you um, after that point, you can choose to either have it or not have that habit. You can, once in a while, even if you were to indulge in it, you'll just do it for the heck of it, and it will no longer trouble you. So this is one approach. The second approach is another logical way of tackling it. So before I expand on the second approach, I would once again request all of you to take a break, pause the video, uh, try to assimilate, digest what we have discussed so far, because in my opinion, this first approach itself is pretty effective, but it can actually cut the tree, right from the roots, the poisonous tree of bad habit, right? So think about it. In fact, I would even suggest that you pause the video at this point, try this first approach for a couple of days, see if you need to continue with this video at all. If you've got your solution, then well, you carry on with your life, man. I mean, you don't have to watch the entire video through also, right? So once you are ready, you can always come back to the video, right? For those of you who had taken a break from this video, welcome back. For those of you who are continuing to watch this video, thanks for staying with me. We are progressing very beautifully on this journey of discovery. So we have up till now discussed about what is a bad habit, why does it form, when does it form, etc. And also we have discussed one of the two approaches, to tackle this issue of bad habits. Having done that, now we are at a stage that we have to look at the second approach. At this juncture, I was just thinking, it would have been very nice if our interaction was very, how do I put it, on a conversation kind of a mode, right? But given that I'm reaching out to you all through this video, that wouldn't be possible. See, this is the advantage one gets when attending an enlightenment camp, which is what I had experienced when I attended my first enlightenment camp. Um, for 3 days, you are in that zone. You are in that place where you are only focused on understanding your mind, your spiritual objectives, and sort of how to end your search, etc. So there is tremendous focus, but at a very relaxed setting. That's the beauty of it. Master Shri Bagavath is very approachable. Almost anybody can talk to him. When you interact with him, you'll realize that it's like talking to a long-standing friend, or a very close relative. He doesn't restrict himself to any particular topic. You can literally discuss anything under the sun with him. You want to talk about current politics, he's game for it. you want to talk about how to change the world, he's equally game for it. And you want to get into serious discussions about and nuances about spirituality, the various kinds of approaches to spirituality, or for the matter, mind, emotions, problems, stress. He is ever ready with sharing his experience about all these matters. And what strikes you is, for a person who is so elevated, not only is he approachable, he is a super good listener. I'm yet to come across a person who listens to you at this level. He lets you talk. He doesn't interfere at all. He waits for you to finish. There are times when we end up talking so much, and he just listens to you patiently and gives you a very simple answer, and you end up thinking, why did I have to elaborate so much? The answer was so simple. If only I had let the master talk initially, we could have had a short and sweet conversation and more fruitful one. But then no, that's the beauty of having a conversation with him, right? So all this happens when you are at an enlightenment camp. So for those of us who haven't had an opportunity to attend an enlightenment camp, uh, first available opportunity, I would suggest that you please jump at it. uh, it's worth everything in your life. That's my personal experience. I only wish that my enlightenment camp happened much earlier. My own quest, I'm sorry, I'm digressing here. I'm sort of moving away from the topic, but I'll join this discussion back to the topic because there's a relevance as to why I'm talking about my background. um, um, I was struggling with my spiritual quest on one hand, and stress levels and emotional issues on the other. So these were, I was struggling with all this for the better part of at least 25 years or so, I think, roughly. That's the earliest I can remember of having sort of um, started thinking about these kind of issues. So, when all this search came to an end at the Enlightenment camp, I can't describe what I felt. I can't put it in words. Uh, it's a very different sensation. Well, defining it or describing it in words actually robs the bliss out of it, if I can put it that way. One has to experience it to understand what I'm talking about. Um, and during the enlightenment camp, what happens is you also end up meeting with like-minded people who have surprisingly similar problems that you have been grappling with, surprisingly have tried similar techniques and tricks to overcome these problems. So you hit a level of camaraderie where it's as if you've known that person for decades. uh, Most of these friendships that happen in the enlightenment camps are soulful ones. If I can, that's the right way to put it. These are soulful friendships that blossom in that setting or ambience. And master is so approachable that he goes on a walk or a trek every morning and evening. So anybody interested is free to join him. So and most of these the walks and treks end up being informal discussions, instead of a classroom kind of a setting. In fact, the entire enlightenment camp is never a classroom setting. It's more of a how do I put it, a friendly discussion, or a family discussion kind of a setting. But uh, going on a walk or a trek with the master, you let down your curls. You're more at ease with yourself. So many things that you would have found difficult to discuss um, in a in a session, probably you can get an opportunity to talk to him one on one also. So these are the advantages which one gets when attending an enlightenment camp. So for the time being, we'll have to make do with connecting through this YouTube video. So let's make the most of it. So coming back to where we left, so we were going to start the second approach. So the second approach is bisecting the whole concept into 4 different steps. So we are going to understand how a habit forms, and if it were to be a bad habit or a habit which you want to get rid of, uh, at which stage does the problem crop up and how to address the issue. That's the way we're going to go about it. So the first step is uh, any habit, or for the matter any act or activity, will start with a thought. So we get a thought first, a thought which provokes us to think further. So the second step is obviously thinking. So in the second step, what happens is thought transforms into thinking. Now, for people who think, what is this thought, thinking? Aren't these two one and the same? Aren't these synonymous? No, there is a subtle difference. I believe there are already videos on our channel which exclusively deal with this topic of thought and thinking. This differentiation is what the master has put as the bedrock or the foundation for the entire concept of understanding the mind, right? So if you get this one thing right, I suppose you can replicate this concept across all kinds of platforms, across how do I put it, across all techniques of handling other issues as well. So I'll try to address it as briefly, because if I were to go into it in detail, that itself is going to take a longer time. So I'll try to put it very concisely. So if anybody wants to get a more detailed, elaborate view on this topic, thought and thinking, you can always go back and look up that particular video, right? So simply put, thought is something that arises on its own, and thinking is something where our effort is involved in maintaining the thought and furthering the thought. As in, and I'm saying furthering thought, you are taking the thought and then you are running with it, you are playing with it, you are indulging in it, you are dealing with it. So you are basically pulling it, or you are stretching the thought into the next level. So that becomes thinking. So in thought, there is no effort involved. Nobody knows, nobody can really point out that this is when the thought started, or this is why the thought started. I wanted this, so this thought came up. No, the thought doesn't come because we want something. The thought happens, and then when we are in the process of trying to convert it into thinking, then our wants, our desires, our wishes, everything joins the bandwagon, and the thought becomes thinking, right? So that is the second step. The third step is action. So the thought comes, then it gets converted into thinking, and after thinking, the mind then says, okay, now I want to put this into action. I want to do something about it. That's the third step. Uh, till now, this process is common for not only a habit, for anything, in any activity that you might undertake, till this point, till the third step, it's all common. Now the fourth step happens when it comes in the name of bad habit, or for the matter any habit that you are not comfortable with and you want to get rid of. So some of you would have already guessed it. The fourth step is the part called guilt, right? So now if you put everything in perspective, for a bad habit, First, a thought comes about that habit. When the thought comes, the mind takes it up and runs with it further, puts an effort, converts the thought into thinking, and having indulged in thinking, it wants to get into action, or it provokes us to act on that thinking. And once we indulge in that act, no, it could be anything, right? Smoking, drinking, substance abuse, drugs, stuff like that. After you finish the action, then comes the guilt. Or in some cases, during the course of action itself, the guilt part starts. Once the guilt comes, then we start self pity, self loathing, self hatred, stuff like this, and then the cycle goes on and on and on, and it's an endless loop. If you actually break it down like this and look back and think about your own experience in life, you'll realize this is how it's been going on. When I first got introduced to this process, this concept, I thought, oh God, why didn't I even think about this in this fashion? I never even realized that this bad habit thing could be broken into 4 different stages. So by breaking it down into four different stages, what happens is we are able to identify where our mind starts getting into the picture, where it did not have any role to play, and once it got into the picture, what happens to us. Once this clarity comes up, then it's always easy to cut the loop, break the chain, and find a solution to it. Um, our master, when he talks about even thought and thinking, especially when he's talking about how to stop excessive thinking and those kind of topics. Um, Again, what is not in your control, we should not even indulge in trying to do something about it. For example, thought is not in our control. We didn't wish for it. We didn't want to generate a thought. But once a thought comes, it's in our hands to identify whether we are converting that into a thinking process or not. In fact, once a thought comes and goes is when we realize that it has come and gone. I know this is sounding a little theoretical. Let me just paraphrase it. Um, Typically, a thought stays for about less than 1 second. Moment we catch on to it and convert it into thinking, then it stays on till the time that we are indulging in the thinking process, or we are in the process of throwing that thinking process. Either which ways, we are giving energy to that, and the loop continues, right? In the same fashion, when a thought comes up to do with a bad habit, if we are not consciously taking it up, then the second step of converting that thought into thinking doesn't happen. So the loop is cut then and there for some reason, right? It becomes a thinking, and then from thinking it becomes an action, and once the action is done, it becomes a guilt, an emotion or an expression called guilt, where you start obsessing about why you ever indulged in it. Now, the trick lies in how we tackle this guilt, because moment you remove guilt out of the equation, what happens is the entire equation collapses. This is the it's like a pack of dominoes, where you tip one domino, and then what happens, right? It goes around and around in that preformed pattern, and then cascades and pulls everything else down, right? So like that, moment you take guilt out of the equation, everything collapses. So the same way that we treat thought, in a similar fashion, if we were to treat guilt, then you have done it, right? So we initially saw that thought is something which is not in our control. We didn't wish for it, we did not want it, it happened. If for a moment, hypothetically, you assume that guilt is similar to thought, as in, we did not wish for the guilt to happen, we did not want to feel guilty, guilt just happened. So, do you have any control over it? No. So, if you don't have control over it, should you fret about it? Should you do something about it? The answer is a simple no. So, just let it be. You feel guilty, let it be. So, by not indulging in the guilt part, by not providing energy to the thing called guilt, you are actually removing the strength out of the whole concept of bad habit, right? So what happens is, you let go, you know, like in the first approach, you are just letting it go free. When you let it go free, then because there is lack of strength in it, slowly, eventually, this whole thing collapses. And when the thought comes itself, either you will not even realize that the thought has occurred. When I'm saying thought, this thought regarding a bad habit, right? We have to understand it from that perspective. So you may not even realize eventually that a thought came and it went off. It will become your second nature, you know, in terms of the bad habit manifesting as a thought and getting cut and killed then and there. Even for some reason, it converts into thinking, and from then on to action. Then you will understand that these happened without your contribution. These happened without your exercising any control over it. So you don't have to take responsibility for it. At this juncture, I would like to remind you all of the disclaimer with which I started this discussion, which is, these things, if they do not harm anybody, trouble anybody, is not detrimental to society, then we can go ahead with this experiment and once and for all get rid of it. But if this were to harm others around you, then we will have to take precautions in trying to indulge in it. Even if it is for our own betterment, we'll have to clearly exercise restraint. Right? With this disclaimer, let's just get back to our discussion. So, so you're giving a free hand. You are removing guilt out of that equation. So even if the emotion of guilt does surface, you're going to treat it just like a thought, and you're going to say, "Look, I didn't create you. I did not want you. You've come up. It's all right. I'll let you be." So the more and more you do this, like a thought, even guilt stays for less than a second. Initially, you might feel the presence, and then you will feel that it is sort of vaporizing out of you. Eventually, you will come to a situation where you will not even realize that it came and went. Maybe in hindsight, maybe after a couple of seconds, you'll say, "Oh, did I feel a little guilty about this? Okay, fine, that's okay." No, you'll just carry on. You'll get on with your routine. So this is the second approach. So between the first and second approach, whatever suits one's temperament, you can adopt that approach. Both are equally effective. For some things, I've found success with the first approach. For certain things, I've found success with the second approach. And one or two things I've actually experimented with both, to see which works for me. It was a very playful exercise, and somehow I felt both were equally effective. Certain times, depending on the circumstances or situation, one works out to be a little more effective than the other. You'll get the hang of it. Once you try it out, you'll get the hang of it. I understand we have been discussing a lot of theory till now. Just theory doesn't really get us the feel of the subject, right? So let's just take a few examples. Again, no dry examples. I would like to share one example from my own life. And probably another example which we at Bagavath Mission had come across. So, so let's start with myself, right? This is a very how do I put it? Very unique thing that I feel it happened to me. As in, in fact, I'm looking at it as a bad habit. I don't know. Most of you may not even think, that it's a big deal, but trust me, for me, it was such a big deal that it was really playing havoc in my life. I was losing sleep on it. My health was getting affected. Can you believe this? My health got affected because I was running with this habit, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. And my, what would I have given to get rid of it? I'd almost, lost hope. I thought, I think it's destined that I have to live with it for my entire life. Then the enlightenment camp happened. Then I got introduced to Master Bhagavath's way of looking at mind, uh, understanding how it plays a part in our day-to-day life. Uh, it was close to a miracle or magic, whatever. These are all words, right? Um, that relief is something that I can't describe. I know I'm again getting back into that zone. I'm aware of it. So, to come back to my example, uh, at some point in time, let's say probably, uh, say 7 8 years back or so, um, something very different happened with me, in the sense I must have had a subconscious need for uh, a sister, right? Uh, in our family, I have an younger brother, so we are just the two of us, the only two siblings, right? So somehow I think it was in my psyche that I wanted to experience sister's love. Uh, it must have been there. I didn't realize it. At some point, it started manifesting itself. Um, so, to cut a long story short, what happened was, I literally started chasing that requirement. It's very funny when I look back in hindsight. It looks very funny. Um, Most people propose love, to their partners. In my case, I have proposed to women who are elder to me, who are younger to me, as elder sisters or younger sisters. I wanted to acquire sisters. Um, I don't know how many of you will be able to relate to this, but uh, I literally used to run behind relationships. I used to go out of the way to make the relationship happen. And mind you, these were not blood relationships. So you meet somebody. In fact, in my case, I met somebody who I thought, appealed to me in a sisterly way. So I would go and propose, will you be my sister? uh, I mean, you don't come across somebody who just comes around and asks you such kind of questions, right? So I've had all kinds of reactions. People who thought I was weird, people who thought I was stupid, all kinds of reactions, right? So then there were also people who initially were um, indulgent. They agreed, oh yes, okay, I would love to have a brother also. So we started, developing the relationship. Um, then what had happened was, in some cases, the relationship became suffocating for me, or um, the relationship became very demanding, that I could not fulfill the time, or the energy required in the relationship. While initially, because I was running with it, I used to go out of the way. Now, eventually, then things settle down, and then, like many other relationship, then you can't really do it at a pace that you were doing it earlier. So that's when the trouble starts. So. Typically, arguments and fallouts. I've had multiple episodes of this. uh, every time something happens, It's not that, I've learned my lesson and no, I don't do it again. The next time I come across somebody, I again, get into this habit of going and asking or proposing, if you can put it that way, will you be my sister? So this has been going on, I don't know, I've even lost count of how many people, I've run with. Uh, there are people who have actually, I don't know, they seem to have realized that this was my weakness. And I've had even people who have misused my genuine affection, or my want for a sisterly love. They've used my affection till the time that they were benefiting out of it, and eventually, sort of have been discarded. Um, Even now, when I talk about it, you would have realized, you can sort of still feel the pain in it. But majorly, I've crossed over that phase. Uh, it's not that I don't get that butterfly thing, when I meet somebody, in a sisterly way. But now I understand how mind works, what I've been doing with this kind of a habit. And why I am taking this example is, as far as I'm concerned, it was a bad habit. I suffered with it. My health got affected. I couldn't concentrate on my job. Uh, there were times when I was thinking, what am I doing in life? Very frustrating. Very frustrating. There are times when I've gotten very depressed. Uh, One of my friends actually stood by me and pulled me out. Um, and of course, the Enlightenment camp happened, and everything changed. Right? So when I went through this experience, or the series of experiences, and when the Enlightenment camp happened, once I understood, I set these approaches into action. I tried the first approach, I got some amount of success. Then I said, okay, we have seen something happening, but am I out of it? No, not really. So what do I do? Okay, come on, let's try the second one now, second approach. So I, sort of broke it down to this thought, thinking, action, and guilt. I realized every time I go through this cycle, the place where I get stuck is the guilt, where I feel, oh God, I've done it again. When am I ever going to learn? Aren't you old enough? How can you behave like a kindergarten kid? Can't you learn your lesson? Self loathing, self hatred. Um, Given a choice, I would have wanted to, crash my knuckle onto the wall. It was sometimes the emotion would surge will be so deep, right? So once I realized it, I followed that approach, and I equated guilt with thought, and gave up any responsibility that I might have assumed for the emotion of guilt. It did not happen overnight. It's not like I did it today and I slept away, and then the next morning when I woke up, it was all a happy ending. No, it didn't happen that way, honestly. But with each succeeding day, I realized that, it was like a fog that was getting lifted. Slowly things were moving away from me, and there was some semblance of sanity that was returning to me. um, Suffice to say that um, I'm as good as out of it. The emotion or a feeling crops up every once in a while when I meet somebody. Um, but I can safely say I don't indulge in it anymore now. And definitely the guilt feeling is not there. So, I don't, how do I put it? I don't um, run with it. I don't spend most of my time dealing with this issue. And what a relief, trust me, so much of time got unlocked. I'm able to productively pursue my other interests. I'm able to focus better. um, isn't this isn't this is what we all want? Anybody who's had any habit to get rid of, isn't this something that you all wish? uh, I'm sharing my own example because we are not talking of theory. We are not talking of a bar of chocolate. It can vary from person to person. This is something that happened to me. So if it can happen to me, and if I can find a solution, so can you. So it's from theory, it converts into practical reality, right? So this is one example I wanted to share with you all. Um, the second example is something that we have encountered in Bagavath Mission. Uh, Apparently, no, I've not experienced this firsthand, but I've had heard the story getting repeated, during the discussions at Enlightenment camps, right? It's apparently it so happened that there was a person who had uh, inquired, at the beginning of an Enlightenment camp as to whether he was qualified enough to join the camp. And why did he have to inquire? Because he had a habit which he could not get rid of, but he thought that might stand in the way of him attending the camp. So, what was this? He was a chain smoker. Now, the camp is happening. Every 15-20 minutes, this person had to leave the hall where the camp was in session, and he had to go out, smoke a cigarette or whatever, maybe 2 cigarettes, 3 cigarettes, whatever that was, and come back and join the class. So, I mean, he was very hesitant that with this kind of a background, will he be able to attend the camp? So he was apparently told, it is for people like you that we are conducting these camps. So please feel free. We are able to understand what you are going through. We appreciate the struggles that you are going through. We are here to help you. So please do attend. So he joined the camp, and he was given freedom. Okay, you want to take a break every 20 minutes? Go ahead, do it. Not an issue. We'll see. So uh, apparently the camp started, and sure enough, after 20 minutes, this person wanted to take a break and go and have a smoke and come back. So this happened for the first 1 or 2 times, and then one of the teachers who was present in the camp got curious. Uh, he wanted to see what was exactly happening. So he followed this gentleman out of the hall, and right enough, this gentleman, once he exited the hall, he went to a slightly secluded place, took out a pack of cigarettes, started smoking, and the teacher later on described what he saw. It was like he took a drag. It took few successive drags. And then he threw the cigarette down, stubbed it with his shoes, and then within a span of a few seconds, or maybe half a minute or 1 minute, whatever, he was back in the hall, to attend the camp. This happened for 1 or 2 times, and then that particular teacher, what happened was he the next time when he moved out of the hall for the smoke, he followed this gentleman, went along with him, and obviously that gentleman got a little rattled. A teacher following him, he didn't expect that. So the teacher told him, not to worry, I'm here to help you. I just wanted to observe what you're doing. So I see that you have a peculiar way of smoking your cigarette. You are just taking a few quick drags on the cigarette and you're stubbing the butt. So he suggested, see, you're doing it because there's something you're getting out of it, right? So why don't you, enjoy it? Why don't you do it slowly? It's almost, like a meditation. You take a drag, inhale deeply, let it swirl around in your body, feel the smoke going around in your body, enjoy the sensation, and once you feel that you've had your round, then you can slowly exhale. So he suggested that this gentleman smoke cigarettes only in this fashion. So when the gentleman asked him, why are you asking me to do it in this fashion, the teacher explained, see, it looks as if when you are trying to smoke, you are not happy about it. Immediately the gentleman interrupted and said, "Of course I'm not happy. I don't want this habit." He started blurting out, that pent up frustration, that irritation, self irritation. I very badly want to quit, but I'm not able to. So every time I put the cigarette to my lips, uh, I feel so bad about it. So which is why I sort of do it in quick succession, and then I throw the cigarette off. So the teacher very calmly asked him, "You've been trying this way of smoking. Have you been successful in getting rid of it?" The gentleman answered, "No." So if that has not been successful, then why don't you try my method? Enjoy it. So when the first cigarette comes to an end, if you still want to smoke the next cigarette, immediately light up the next cigarette. Go on, but then every time that you inhale the smoke, you will do it with utmost pleasure, utmost enjoyment. You will relish each and every pull on the cigarette. So even when the camp was going on, this person, when he was trying to follow this technique, um, I believe he smoked some three or four cigarettes continuously in this fashion. And I think towards the fourth cigarette, he started getting a level of saturation. Uh, what does this remind you guys of? Do you remember that theory in economics that I spoke to you about? Law of diminishing marginal utility. Now you understand where the law is getting applied. So it was not just theory that we were talking, again a practical application of that theory. So in this gentleman's case, that theory kicked in, and I think on the fourth cigarette, the sense of enjoyment that he was achieving was reducing more and more, and he said, It's enough for now." So then they got back to the class. So this was happening, and the story goes on that towards the end of the camp itself, he had found quite a bit of relief, which is at the end of 3 days. But he was keeping at the habit, and ultimately, at the end of a month or month and a half, I think from 3.5 to 4 packets of cigarettes, which was roughly a pack of cigarette in India is what I think it's about 10 sticks, right? 10, not there are some packs which come in 20s also. So whatever. So even let's assume it was uh, 10 a pack, right? So 4 packs is what, 40 cigarettes in a day. So from 40 cigarettes in a day, in about a month or month and a half, he had brought it down to something like 15 or 20, less than half actually. So in about 2 months time or 2.5 months time, the beauty happened that he no longer smoked. He had completely gotten rid of the habit, and very joyfully called up the same teacher who initiated him into this technique, and very happily, joyfully shared this development, and told him that it's been what, week or 10 days since he had touched a single stick of cigarette. Now, this is one example that I'm sharing with you of people who have benefited from these techniques. There are numerous such examples that we have. We can make a video just for sharing these examples, but then I think the point is conveyed, right? So these are not just theory that we are talking about. I have shared my example where I have seen a transformation happening within me. Um, I've shared an example where another gentleman who had attended an enlightenment camp benefited vastly out of it. So if we all can see success, if we all can see relief, if we all can set our life in order, why not you all? It's easy for you all as well. All you have to do is just calmly go through this video. If you are not able to grasp it in the first go, listen to it again, watch it again, mull over it, assimilate it, digest it. Eventually it will become your nature, and once you have mastered this, you can sort of replicate this technique or these techniques for almost tackling any emotion. You can apply the same thing for anger, for same thing for getting rid of sorrow, practically everything. So you get it right one time, then how do I put it, the chances are that you will end up replicating this in many walks of life, right? So this is something that I wanted to share with you all. And now we can sort of safely answer this question that we started with. Can we get rid of bad habits? Of course we can. I have gotten rid of it. If I can, so can you. It's that simple. So please make use of this video. Please share this video with others. You will benefit out of it. So once you have benefited, please share it with others who have similar problems or who are looking for solutions. We have struggled, solving our problems. Once we have found a way out, it's only right that we help others who are also in a similar search. Please share this video with others, your friends, your relatives, anybody who you think will benefit out of this. This is a wonderful journey. Once you embark on it, uh, using these techniques and applying them in your life, you will definitely see a transformation blossom in your life as well. So my best wishes to you all in your journey in tackling this issue of getting rid of bad habits, and I wish you tremendous and permanent success in your endeavor. Thank you very much.